My name is Rhonda Breakreitz. I'm an associate professor here at the U of A in the Department of Human Ecology, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here tonight for this lecture that we're going to have from Mr. Chris Morris on team building. Before I introduce Mr. Morris, I would just like to spend a moment and tell you a little bit about the Lougheed College. We have been in operation since August 2015. We have just over 120 students now in two cohorts at our college, and we're thrilled to see our program grow and develop. The unique thing about the Lougheed College is that it is interdisciplinary, so students from any undergraduate program across campus is invited to apply for this program. And this lecture series is part of our curriculum. It's part of a course called Topics in Leadership that I am the lead instructor for. And so tonight we're all learners here taking a course, although only the students have to learn the material in depth, but the rest of you are welcome to. I just have a few things I'd like to mention. First of all, we have viewers from Augustana campus in Camrose. We have students out at Camrose, so they are watching tonight from live stream. We also have viewers at Red Deer College watching from Red Deer. And tonight, for the first time, we have viewers as well from MacEwan University here in Edmonton watching live stream. So we'd like to welcome all of those viewers that are here in spirit watching us through technology. As we begin, I would also like to acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. I have a few announcements. First of all, you'll notice when you came in that the campus food bank is here. They are here for every lecture. If you would like to bring a food donation or a monetary donation, that would be much appreciated. We are currently recruiting for the Lougheed program for next year. If you know of an undergraduate student entering third year that might be interested, in this program, or if you yourself are one of those students, we encourage you to look on our website to get more information about the program. Tonight's lecture is going to run until 7:15. It's going to start with a lecture from Mr. Morris, followed by a Q&A session moderated by our principal, the Right Honorable Kim Campbell. During this lecture, we ask that you do not take audio or video recordings, but we would welcome you to take pictures and tweet out quotes from the lecture. That would be wonderful. Our next lecture is on February 6th. It's going to be on communication, and it's going to be given by Ahmed Nomadic Ali, who is a poet, so it's going to be quite a unique and creative lecture, and we hope that you'll be able to attend that as well. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Chris Morris. Chris was named the head coach of the Golden Bears football program in 2012. Chris holds 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Physical and Health Education from the University of Toronto and a Bachelor of Education from the University of Alberta. He was a 2-time CIS All-Canadian while playing for the University of Toronto Varsity Blues. He won the J.P. Metris Trophy as the most outstanding down lineman in the country in 1990. He also played in the East-West Shrine Bowl before getting drafted in the first round of the 1992 Canadian Football League draft by the Edmonton Eskimos. He started in his rookie season and played an additional 14 seasons or 237 games for the Eskimos. That's a lot of football games. He was a team captain, and he played in 5 Grey Cup games with the Eskimos, winning 3 of them, the glory days of the Edmonton Eskimos. He was given a plaque on the Eskimos' Wall of Honor in Commonwealth Stadium in 2008, so you can go there someday for a field trip and check that out. While still playing in the CFL, Mr. Morris became a full-time teacher within the Edmonton Public Schools in 1997 and earned a Provincial Teacher of Excellence nomination during that time. He ascended to principal in 2009, and as principal of the Spruce Avenue Junior High, he moved the school's provincial achievement success rate from 50% to almost 90%, the highest in the history of the school. That's extraordinary. Mr. Morris has also been active with Edmonton and area charities and communities, including the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Ronald McDonald House, and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Chris Morris.
Can you guys hear me on the mic, or am I clear in the back? Okay, guys, I want to start off thanking you very much and thanking the Peter Lougheed Leadership College for having me here. I see this as a tremendous opportunity, and I don't know how many people in the world have the opportunity that I have here tonight. And I see this cohort of people as being really the top cohort I've ever had the opportunity to address. And I've talked to charities, I've talked to corporations, I've talked to teams, I've talked to all sorts of people. And I want you guys to understand that very few people have the honor to address a cohort of people from a top 100 university who have been selected as leaders in their community to be part of a group to learn about leadership. The capacity for growth, success, and a bright future for the people in this group is immense, more so than most. And with that comes lots of responsibility, and a lot on my part to come here and have the opportunity to address you. So understand, I don't take this lightly, and I hope that through my discussions tonight, you take something out of this that serves you. And it may be one small piece, and what you'll find, you're really young right now, what you'll find when you get old like I am is that the more you listen to people, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what you're doing, there's something to be learned. There's some little tidbit that you can take from them. And what I'm hoping to do is give you guys something along those lines tonight, something that I can share with you that you guys can take with you. Now, the one thing that I think I do bring for you is a wide diversity of experiences. I've had the opportunity to lead on the sports field. I've had the opportunity to lead as a CIS athlete, as a professional player. I've had the opportunity to lead in unions with CIS, with CFL Sport, with the school board, as a principal, as an administrator. And those experiences, I think, give me common threads to what happens with leadership. And I think as we go through the discussion tonight, what we'll look at is whether you're on a field of play, or whether you're in the classroom, or whether you're coaching, or whether you're in a corporation, any setting offers common threads for leadership, and for team building in particular, which is what I'm here for tonight. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk to you. It is a leadership college, so I want to talk a little bit so you guys can get to know me a little bit about what I think of leadership. Because if you don't have that context, it becomes difficult for you to understand what I'm saying about how to build teams. Leadership to me, guys, is all about service. And you'll understand there's a distinction between leadership and direction. Direction is what you do when you're in a small group and you tell people what to do. Leadership is when you serve a group to accomplish goals they could not accomplish independently and allow them to have success, both as individuals and as a group cohort. That is what leadership is to me, and that is what I think as you grow as leaders, you'll understand the service you provide to those you're working with on a daily basis is essential. Understand that you are serving them. They're not there to make you an important person. They're not there to make you look good. If you do your job, they look good. They perform well. They perform beyond their capabilities. If you think of it, if you're directing, if you're telling people what to do, your capacity is so limited. You can only tell 3 or 4 people what to do and do things yourself and be effective. In order to be a good leader of large-scale projects, you have to be able to serve those people and allow people to become great leaders themselves and allow them to have great successes themselves. And my vision of leadership in regards to service is that I try to empower those around me. I try to empower those working with me and around me so that they can be successful leaders themselves. So that's the first premise. The second thing, guys, is reflection. If you lead, you reflect. You're thinking about what you do well, you're thinking about what you don't do well, and the better you are, the more you think about those things. Because the minute you think that you got it all figured out, man, I'm good at this, I can just do it with my eyes closed, you're falling behind. You're losing people in your organization. Think about what you do, think about when you're doing things well, think about when things aren't going well, and make sure that you're reflecting on a daily basis to make sure you're improving. The last thing is this, and this is the big warning I'm going to give you. I'm going to speak to you tonight, and at some points I'm going to, oh man, he's pretty confident, he thinks he knows what he's doing, and you're going to see a whole bunch of people that talk to you about leadership. And every single person that comes up here is going to say, this is what it takes, these are some leadership skills, here's what it is. Let me promise you this. No one has this thing figured out. You, as you lead, are going to get beat up. You're going to get hit. You're going to be in a situation at times because you care. You're servicing people. You care about what you're trying to build, and your feelings will get hurt. And if they don't, you're not very good. Because if you don't care about what you're trying to build, and you don't care about the people around you, and when somebody says something bad about what you're trying to create, if it doesn't hit you on a personal note, then you've really got to reflect on whether or not you should be in a leadership role. And I promise you this, whether it be myself, whether it be Ms. Campbell, whoever it is who's leading, President Obama, President Trump, whoever it is, okay, they take it personally. They take it personally and they get hit and it hurts when things go wrong. So understand that if you're not willing to do that, leadership will be very, very difficult going forward for you, okay? So let's talk about team building here and let's talk about why it's an important part of leadership. And I'll ask this question, I'll pose this to you guys. Why are teamwork and team building such an important component to effective leadership? Who knows this? Who thinks they have an answer to this question? Like, because I could honestly, we could all do, I could stand you all up and you could stand on the edge of your chair and you could catch each other and we'd have a great little, and we'd all leave here laughing and feeling good. And oh, we just did a team building exercise. Man, we're awesome. Like, we're a team now. We'd be worse than we probably were before because somebody probably fall and hit their head or something, but we certainly wouldn't be a team. So who thinks they know the answer to this question? Why build team? Why have teamwork? Why is it essential to any organization's success? I will pick on people if no one answers. Yes?
We're stronger together.
Okay, we're stronger together. Who can expand on that sentence? We are stronger together. What does that mean?
There are certain tasks you can't do alone.
There are certain tasks you can't do alone. Go a little further for me. Somebody else go a little further for me. Certain things I can't do by myself. Small tasks I can. What sort of tasks can't I do by myself? If I had to have you all involved in an organization, and we were all doing an immense scale project, huge project, I couldn't do it by myself effectively. And the value of team building and the value of doing it with a group of people is just, and it seems very pragmatic, and I'm kind of a pragmatic guy, but what it does is it gets maximum output of the resources available to you as the leader of that group. Because if we're a team, if I just say to you, okay, we're going to work on reading, so go ahead, everybody get better at reading. Or we're a school staff and I want you guys to teach people reading. Go ahead and do it. Okay, well, I kind of do it on my own. But if we create a system with team where every single person works with one another and every single person is somewhat interdependent with one another, it creates a situation where, like we said, the larger group has power and is far more powerful than individuals. So as I go through here tonight, I'm going to go through some of my different experiences with leadership and try to show you some lessons that I've learned through it. And I think a good one to start with is anytime you look at high-performance teams, it gives you an indication of what's good and what's bad. And my first experience, guys, when I was 23 years old, I had the experience to be part of one of the most high-performing teams, probably in the history of sport. The Edmonton Eskimos during this time went to 33 or 32 consecutive playoff appearances, okay? Everybody talks about right now the New England Patriots, they're a dynasty. They've been to 8 straight playoff appearances. Everybody talks about, I don't know, the Oilers when they were in their dynasty. I think it was 10 or 11 straight playoff appearances. The Edmonton Eskimos went to 32 playoff appearances. So if you think about the average career expectancy of a player being 2 years, you see the turnover of players that's happened, and it had to be more than them just having good guys as to why they're doing it. So I had a really, really good experience in getting to be there. And there's something special about the organization that made it good, that made it perpetually successful. If it can't be the players, what did it have to be? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. If we start looking at any great team, any great direction, any great thing that happens, it starts with this. Core values. What do you stand for? And I'm telling you, if you're building a team and you say to your team, we want to accomplish this, and you don't explain to them what you're all about, what you stand for, what you're trying to accomplish, how you're trying to accomplish it, what the core values of your organization are, there is no roadmap. You're basically saying, go and try your best. And what are you really promoting if you do that? Are you promoting that people work together? Absolutely not. you're promoting a culture of individualism. You're promoting a culture of people independently doing their best, which isn't bad if you've got a bunch of good individuals. But it'll never be as powerful as what teamwork can bring to you. It will never coordinate in concert the efforts of other people. And I think when you look at the core values of an organization, you're looking at the number one factor that builds team. Do you have a set of core values? Do you know what your organization stands for? Are these things people buy into and respect and love? Those are huge pieces, okay? So I'll talk to you guys about the Edmonton Eskimos, and this is the Edmonton Eskimo way. A lot of people talk about the Eskimo way. A lot of old guys do all the time. A whole bunch of players who didn't even play on those teams talk about it. But this is what it was. The first two are just football stuff. Anytime you're in a competitive environment, you got to be tough. Anytime you're in a competitive environment, you got to compete. The toughness part, like we'd have, and I want to tell too many football stories, guys, but the toughness part was very, very important to us as a group. Like you couldn't get hurt. If you were down on the ground, guys would scream at you, get up. I don't care, get up. It was just the way it was there. You were tough, mentally and physically. You weren't allowed to get hurt. So you'd have to get up, or you'd be ridiculed for the rest of the week. That's just sort of the way our culture was. It was just, it's the way you need to be to win in that sport. And competition was huge. We had guys who would do anything to win, anything. We couldn't put pads on. Everybody would say, oh, they're not putting pads on because they don't want to they don't want to get hurt. They don't want guys to fall on each other, whatever. We couldn't put pads on because guys would kill each other. We had a bunch of guys who really, really liked to play hard. And if we put pads on, it got serious in practice, and you can't play that many games. You can only play one game a week. As soon as the groups we had put pads on, it was like a game day. So those things were important. But the third one's the one I want to talk about with you guys, because the first two are more related just to football, okay? Individual success means very little here. This was one of and I say one of, this was the reason that 32 straight years the Edmonton Eskimos went to the playoffs. This one thing, okay? Very, very important to understand that that one thing creates role identification for everybody. So the final core value, which minimizes the importance of individual success, is very important to all teams. Why? Why is it important for any effective team, whether it be a team that's trying to create software or whether it be a team that's trying to win a national championship? Why is minimizing the importance of individual success so key? Who thinks they have an answer? Yes? Okay, so it creates less friction because we have that common vision of what it should be. Absolutely. I think there's a little more to it, but yes. What else is important about this? You're in an organization where individual success isn't important, but group success is. Let me ask you this. If the people that work at this university, and let's just pretend the university is a team for a second, okay? All the teachers and everybody trying to get you guys to the best possible place where you can be to affect society in a positive way. If the garbage wasn't cleaned out of here every day, what would happen? Day after day after day, it would fill up. Could we come to school after a while? So is it safe for me to say then that the people who collect garbage from this university have an integral role to your success as students? Yeah, because without them, we can't be successful. That's the mindset of effective organizations. When you walk into a high-performing organization, everybody understands that everyone else's role is vital to the success of that team. If you don't understand that, then you go into a silo and you work just on yourself and that's all you care about. Because you don't understand that everyone else, the person sitting beside you, the person down the hall, they all have an integral role as well. The section about, or the part that I mentioned earlier about everybody understanding or minimizing the importance of the individual is huge to high-performing teams. If you look at functional teams, you look at the best teams you see, and I'll use sports as an analogy because it's a very simple analogy. It's team at its most basic level. The stars on good teams, are they vocal, outrageous people? The teams that win consistently? No, they don't. The stars on high-functioning teams are different than the stars on teams that perpetually lose. I don't know, I'll throw another football analogy. Des Bryant's a very, very good receiver in the NFL. Best receiver probably in the whole league. They never win. He's always talking about what should happen and how things should be, and how if everybody else did their job, they'd be better. The stars on the Edmonton Eskimos during the 1990s, we had guys like Gizmo Williams, we had, everybody knows Gizmo, and Damon Allen, all these stars. They never once when I was there made me feel like I was less important than them. Not one rookie that came into that organization ever felt like they were less important than the people who were doing big things on the field. The culture that we'd created there was huge. Everyone knew that we depended on each other in order to be successful as a team. That's the starting point. And the reason it's the starting point, ladies and gentlemen, is because it leads to this. When you have that, when you have interdependence, when you have respect and admiration for everyone else in your organization and what they do, you create accountability. Who can say this to me? You guys have done some work on leadership. What's the difference between top-down and bottom-up accountability? What would you guys say just by reading that sentence? What is the difference between the two? What's top-down accountability? Anybody want to venture a guess?
I think top-down is when you're policed by sort of an authority figure, but bottom-up accountability is when you're not policing everybody, but it's when you're holding yourself accountable to everyone else.
Absolutely. Okay? And I'll say to you, as a coach on a team, as a leader of a corporation, as the principal of a school, as the department head of a department, if you have top-down accountability where it's like, this is the way we're doing it, and I don't care whether you like it or not, it's just the way it is, you will not be an effective leader. You'll be successful for a short period of time out of fear, but in the long term, that group will look for ways to defy what the group vision is. Because it's not the group vision, it's your vision. And what happens in those sort of organizations that figure it out and that have the people in the organization policing one another because they understand, hey, if the guy that's responsible for doing the garbage, or the guy who's responsible for, let's use a teaching example, a reading example. In grade 4, that grade 4 teacher is supposed to teach this in reading. And they get to me in grade 5 and they haven't done it. The principal can get upset and say, well, this is a problem, but it's far more powerful if colleagues in schools or colleagues in corporations or colleagues on teams do it. You can't do it if you don't understand how important everyone else's role is. If your job's just more important than everybody else's and that's how you feel, it's very difficult to have a down-up accountability system. And accountability, ladies and gentlemen, is huge to the importance of team. If there is no accountability, you have no team, you have no way to accomplish things. And if your accountability comes from someone yelling or someone getting upset or wondering when the boss is around when you have to work hard, you truly have a dysfunctional team working there. That is not effective leadership. If you're walking through as the leader of an organization and every time you walk by people start working or they stand up straighter, you're probably not on track to where you want to be. They should work just as hard, they should be just as engaged, they should be just as empowered in what they do when you're there as when you're not there. And that's an important measure for you as a leader to know whether or not you're on the right track. It is hugely important. Okay? Now, the accountability system for the Eskimos was a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit. I just want to caution you on this. This is the 1990s, and I'm not understand. I don't believe in hazing. Okay? I don't believe in it. Okay? And this is what I call hazing. Hazing is when you degrade people. Hazing is when you do things that are disrespectful to other people as human beings, okay? The Eskimos, well, I shouldn't say they didn't have any of it. They had a little bit of that because it was the 90s. It was before hazing became such a negative thing, and it's good that it's gone. But what the Edmonton Eskimos did have was a love for our core values. We understood what we were about. We understood the things that were important for us. So what would happen if someone came in and someone who had a different outlook, and I'm telling you, we had stars, we'd sign people from all over the place because everybody wanted to come play here. This was the utopia of the CFL. It was the franchise to come play in. And invariably, every 3 or 4 years, somebody would come in. And they'd be different cats. Look at me, look at me, look at how great I am, all talking badly about other players. That's when the Phantom would call. The Phantom would go do something with them. They'd talk with them. They'd do things with their equipment. There'd be a correction mechanism within the team to make sure that person understood. Now, it wasn't degrading, and it wasn't any of those sort of things I'm talking about. And what I'm trying to get across to you around a very touchy situation here, a very touchy topic, is that the coaches had nothing to do with this. Nothing. This was a self-regulating mechanism. Just like any effective organization has a self-regulating mechanism to make sure people are working effectively. And if it has to go to the supervisor every single time, if you as the leader are the only person dealing with things that are wrong with your team's broken. Broken. Because you shouldn't be dealing with every little thing that's wrong with your team. You should have other people who are directly in connection with them dealing with it. And this is one of the things the players did very, very well in the Eskimo organization. Our stars were different. They were lunch pail guys. They hung out with everybody. They did everything everyone else did. They were just as accountable to everyone as what every player. A first-year player, I was a rookie who went there. There wasn't one veteran player there who felt they were more special, who deserved more, who should have more than what I did. And that's what made that team special. Very, very important part of it, okay? So 14 years I dealt with the Edmonton Eskimos and very strong core values and a system of accountability to make sure that those core values were maintained. Huge parts. Halfway through my football career with the Eskimos, I had the privilege of starting to teach. And I got to teach up at a school called Lougheed High School. It's up in the north end of town here. And I started off as a teacher, and I was a full-time teacher while I was playing, which is a really cool way to do things. And I always talk to my Social 13 kids, because when you first get a teaching job and you're in the north side, Social 13 is like Social 10-2 now for you guys. So these are all guys who have failed stuff before. These are all guys who struggle in school. Okay? Really, students who really have struggled to find their way. This wasn't 32 straight playoff year guys. That's not the kind of guys these guys were, okay? They struggled, okay? But what I'll say to you is working with these kids and working through education with them, a lot of the same principles applied. Creating core values for the classroom, creating a system of accountability in the classroom. Those things worked, and more so as I went through my career as a teacher with my students, as I became a leader of a department. Because about 5 years after I was there, I became the department head of the school. And I'll tell you, when you start talking about in a department meeting, my first meeting with my department, I can remember walking in, and I was still playing at the time, and I came in to meet with everybody, and everybody's sitting in the room, and half the people are kind of facing one way, and half the people are facing the other way, and I'm trying to talk to them about, like, you know, what our diploma results are, and it was a mess. I remember the assistant principal was there, because it was my first meeting as a leader. She's like, what is your leadership style? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know right now. And it was like 3 days after we'd lost in the playoffs, and it was my first meeting. I was like, oh my goodness gracious. That's one of the times I got hit with this whole thing, where it's just like, oh, I got to figure something out with this, right? And the one thing I'll tell you, I just went back to what I know. Like, what are we going to stand for here? And as a department, we said, okay, look, here are the things we need to get better at. And we made a clear mandate. Here, we're going to get better at the reading portions on the diploma exams. We're going to get better at scaffolding between grade 10, 11, and 12. And we set some pretty simple core values as to what we wanted to do as a group. And then as a group, we progressed. And I gave people, and very, very important, roles to follow. We're going to have a progression. When a kid's in grade 10, they're going to learn how to write an introductory paragraph. When they get to grade 11, they're going to have some support for that paragraph. By the time they get to grade 12, they're going to be able to write an essay. Before that happened, before we set down, here's our plan, here are our core values. Our core values is we want our kids to be able to write. Before we had that, there was nothing. One guy would teach a little bit of writing, one guy would teach none. There were kids getting to grade 12 who hadn't ever written an essay. Imagine, you're going to write a diploma exam, you've never written an essay. Impossible to be successful. Impossible. So all it took was to set down some guidelines. And as a leader, if you're taking over an organization, understand something. That's your job. Your job's not to make everybody happy, to just let them do whatever they want. Your job's to set down guidelines that everybody has input on that are going to allow you to be successful as a group. And that was a huge part there as the department head at Lougheed of Social Studies. Now, as I continued on through, I became an assistant principal, and actually I moved to Harry Ainley High School. And Harry Ainley High School is very different than Lougheed High School. I'll just tell you that right now. It's very, very different. Okay, so at Lougheed High School, my office was right around the corner from where the kids would come in. And I'd have a kid in every Mr. Morris, this is up, Mr. Morris, and stuff's going all over, and I'm patrolling, and there were different ethnic groups that had issues with one another, so I'd be over at the mall dealing with that. There was always stuff going on at Lougheed High School. I got to Harry Ainley High School, and I swear to you, a kid had to go through 100 meters of administrators to actually talk with me. It was a big, long gauntlet, and all these ladies were there with their glasses like this. Why do you want to speak to Mr. Morris? I didn't talk to a kid for 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? This is like, so I went in there, and what I found out really quickly was, okay, if I'm going to be an assistant principal here, I'm going to have to make some work for myself because I can't sit here all day. My feet are getting tired from just walking around the school. So what we started talking about there is we said, okay, there are some kids who are unsuccessful. And there was how many of you guys have heard of the no zeros policy? You guys ever hear of that? Okay, very, very unpopular policy, okay? So the no zeros policy, for those of you who don't know, is the thought process that goes like, if a kid doesn't hand an assignment in, it's not handed in, you can't give him a 0 because he hasn't shown what he knows and what he doesn't know, okay? Now that's a really good, guys, I agree with it, okay? I agree with it because you don't know what they know, okay? But here's the bad part. A lot of teachers took that as, well, okay, he didn't hand it in. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Oh, he didn't have that one, let's go to the next one. Oh, he didn't have that, let's go on. Next thing you know, you're 3/4 of the way through the year and nobody's handed in anything. And everybody's marks are like 70s and 80s. And it's like, well, he did this one thing and he did okay on it. But it's like, and so the teachers are losing their minds. They're losing their minds. They can't deal with it, right? And one of the things that we had to create was we had to say, okay, look, in theory, is it accurate to say when a kid doesn't hand something in, that it probably doesn't mean that they know absolutely nothing. They might know something, right? We have to find out what they know. So what was missing? You just needed a structure. You needed an accountability system. And we created something called No Kid Left Behind, which later became Halo, where it was like, you had to hand your stuff in. If you don't hand your stuff in, then you come after school. You're in detention until it gets in. And if you don't hand it in, I call your house, and then we come get you. It's almost like the Gestapo. You have to get your stuff in. You know? All of a sudden, the teachers are like, hey, I kind of like this. People are actually handing their stuff in. I don't have to give all these non-zeros. So it's really, guys, and what was that system? It was just, again, what are we going to stand for? We stand for no zeros. We all agree with this policy, but let's put some structures in place to make it work, okay? And that was one of the big things as an assistant principal at Harry that I was able to accomplish. Now, I'll premise this next section by this. Be very careful for what you ask for in life. Because by the time I was finished my first year at Harry High School, I was pretty sure I had it all figured out. I was like, man, I'm ready for a principalship. I need to be the boss of a school. I need to be a person empowering others, blah, 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 blah. So the superintendent called me. He's like, hey, okay, hey. And all he had to do was call. As soon as he called me, I was in. He could have said anything. I don't even know what he said to me on the phone. I got a school. I'm in. I'll be there Monday. So he gives me Spruce Avenue School. Now, Spruce Avenue School is a very interesting place. Okay, Spruce Avenue School is the lowest socioeconomic school in the province of Alberta. Okay, but a 97% rate of poverty. Okay, Spruce Avenue School, when I took it over, was a K-9. One of the things I'm sure he must have said in the conversation, although to this day I don't believe he did say it, was his plan was to close down every other junior high school in the inner city and send them all to me. And to send all my nice little kids off to somewhere else that they could deal with them. So I had 1 year where I had all these nice little kids and we were teaching them how to read and doing all these sort of things and going out for lunch with them and having recess and playing to like every inner city kid in the city of Edmonton. 300 of them. All of them didn't like each other very much because they had these rivalries going around in the inner city. They all came to us. Combined PAT results. I'm not lying to you when I say this. There was a school who had 0 on their PAT results for math. 0. Not one kid in the whole school passed. 0. Okay? The overall success rate for some of these inner city schools was somewhere in that 20% range. So the combined cohort of success was about 40%. About 60% of these kids failed all of their PATs. All of them. Not successful in this, but not successful in that. All of them. Now, when you start talking about the inner city, you talk about a very slippery slope. There was an organization around called CEGEP, City Center Educational Partnership. And there were a whole bunch of agencies that became involved in the lives of these kids. And the kids desperately needed it. But I'll say this to you, just like I said it back then. Giving a kid a warm cup of hot cocoa in the morning and then letting the day slip away while he pisses around and doesn't do anything in class and causes trouble does not serve that kid. Because in 4 years, they're in the exact same spot they were when they started, and now you got a real problem. So what I'll say to you is at Spruce Avenue School, we had a series of issues. And there's a couple of stories here I want to tell you guys about what it was like. The solution, however, wasn't what they were doing. It wasn't just giving kids more food and more places to hang out and more things to do. There was more to it than that. And I think their transition at the school was a large part of that. The kids at Spruce Avenue School go through a very, very interesting, check my time here. The kids at Spruce Avenue School go through a very, very interesting process as they go to school, okay? If you've never been to the Coliseum LRT, you should go sometime. And go with a friend, okay? Let me just say that, okay? Go with a friend, okay? Because I want to go with a friend, and I'm 6'6" and about 300 pounds, and I don't really feel great there, okay? So what I'll say to you is this. Every one of those young kids go through there almost every day, and they get harassed by gangs, and they get harassed by pimps, and they get harassed by all sorts of low-life people. That's their daily life. Well, our kids, and you likely, were driven to school and taken to school, and my kids are the same. I drive them to school every day. Mom takes them to school, and they get mad at mom because they don't drive them on time, and it's embarrassing, really. They're privileged. They're privileged children. These guys had nothing, okay? I'm going to tell you a little story about my favorite guy that I ever taught, a guy named Eli at Spruce Avenue School, okay? Eli was resilient, he was tough, he was smart, everything you can imagine that was good about a kid, okay? Always thinking, always had an angle, one of those kind of kids, like really, really cool kid, okay? Eli learned that honestly. When Eli was very, very young, 10, parents left, bailed, no idea where they went. Eli stole, got food, and took care of his younger brothers for about 3 months before anybody figured out what was going on with him. So that's the kind of leader Eli was at 10, 11 years old. He supported his family, he figured out a way to make it work, was innovative and smart enough to survive, okay? That's Eli, okay? So, really, really good kid. Now, at Spruce Avenue School, we had lots of stuff going on with literacy. Literacy, to me, if you teach a kid to read, you give them a chance at life. And there's all sorts of different stats on literacy, and there's one about they build schools based on literacy, this and that. The best stat you can ever use is this. If you teach a kid to read by the time he's in grade 3, and you teach another kid to read by the time he's in grade 3, it makes no statistical difference what socioeconomic group they came from that point forward as to what their success in life is going to look like. Okay? So, if a kid knows how to read, if a kid's at grade level, and this sort of equates out to grade 6 as well, by grade 6, by junior high, if you can get them even in reading levels, the chance of that kid having a successful life is very, 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 it's even with somebody who has very, very good advantages economically. So we rushed to run all these literacy contests. Guys, I'll say this about Spruce Avenue School. We really took care of literacy very, very well. Now, Eli entered this writing contest we had, because our whole theme at Spruce Avenue was always force fate. I don't care how bad things are, man, make it work. Make it happen. I used to have kids in my office, they'd be crying about, you know, I punched this kid because this happened, I'd go, hey, no one cares. You're going to leave this building, and no one's going to care about that. If you punch somebody, you're going to go to jail. We're going to help you, but no one out there cares what happened to lead you to do this. Force fate, make it happen for yourself was huge for us at Spruce Avenue. So Eli entered and I'll just read Eli's poem to you. He won this writing contest. This is one of my favorite things. I have it posted in my office. I'll always have this till the day I die. My mom didn't give me courage. My dad didn't give me heart. What am I going to complain about? I'll figure it out. Yeah, I've got some stuff on my back, but I don't really care. I want to go home. I want to stay there. I just want to be successful. Okay, here we go again. I want to follow my dreams and my destiny like old-time history. But what am I supposed to do? Should I move on like I used to do? My dream will come true. That's what I'm going to do. I just want to be successful. Yeah, I need courage once again. I want to feel it all over again. Don't slow down. Here come my gifts and ability. My gift is being cool, but really I'm just an old-time fool. My ability is going to school, not giving up like my mom and dad did. I just want to be successful. Eli was great in grade 7 and did a really, really good job, won the writing contest. He was on my basketball team in grade 8. Ferocious competitor. Eli used to come down with me because I used to go down to the basement with all my behavior kids, because for them, cleaning up the basement was a huge deal. So we used to go down there every Friday, and they'd beg to go down there to clean up garbage, because they just loved, because it was productive. It was something they did that they could do, they could look at it at the end, and Eli would sort of always be sort of the lead hand on that stuff. I really, really got to enjoy Eli. I viewed him as more than just a kid at my school. And halfway through grade 8, Eli's parents came back. Eli should be with us. We want to take him back to where we live. Eli left. Nobody saw Eli again. Last I heard, he dropped out of school. He just sort of wandered around. Okay? That's the reality of that inner city school. That's the reality of what Spruce Avenue School was. Those are the kids you deal with. And it's important you understand, everyone there had to understand that. Everyone else had to understand that if you go into your classroom and try to deal with kids like that, you're going to go crazy. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to have a place that we can be proud of and a place that the kids want to come to. We have to work together. We have to create a culture of success. We have to have core values that lead us to having that culture of success. Okay? And to us, it all left down to this. How can we work together? How can we create leadership and a direction and a focus? And it all started with the core values for us for that school. Our number one core value was that this is a place to learn. You will respect learning. And boy, did we suspend and expel kids for that first year. And you're going to look at me and you're going to say, how could you send one of those kids off? The reason I can send one of those kids off is because that community and every kid in that school deserved somewhere to go and be able to learn. And they didn't deserve to go somewhere where someone's yelling in the middle of the lesson. Or here was my favorite one, putting their hand down their pants and playing with themselves and then go rubbing it on people's faces. That's the kind of behavior that was just being tolerated at the school. And the kids would come to me and go, well, we didn't want to say anything. And why wouldn't you say something? That can't happen here. And it took us about a year and a bit, and then people started to understand. And even the kids who got in trouble understood. We're about learning. There has to be a place where you can come in and learn. And to me, this was the huge transition of the school. Okay, it requires your best, a place that'll help you bring out your best. And just from an academic standpoint, because I really think my heart still believes to this day, 95% of what we did at that school was about culture. Reading will be the most important thing we do. And as a staff, we got on board of how to teach kids how to read. We had intervention programs. We had programs to make sure when a kid came in and they were below grade level, we knew about it now. And right the next day, they got working on it. The superintendent would fire me, but I got rid of French. He didn't know that. I got rid of it. We didn't have time to teach French. We had a bunch of kids 5, 6 grade levels below in reading. Why don't I teach them French? Seriously. So, luckily I don't work. Don't tell that story. That's private. Okay? It's very, very important though, okay? Important to the mission. Okay? So, another thing, another support we put in place. So we put in a great reading program. We put in success for that. Spartan Success Program. Okay? All these disruptive kids, nobody's doing the work. Mr. Morris, the kids in my class aren't doing their work. Well, what do you mean they're not doing their work? Well, they just won't do it. They sit in the back and they just don't do their work. Okay, well, here's 2 things. In my office, I'd have 3 or 4 kids sitting with me almost every period. That first year, I'd have guys around me, hey, get this done, get that. So I'd sit there working with the kids who got thrown out of class who needed to get their work done. They weren't just sent away, they were sent down to get their work done. Then we created a school-wide program for that, and we called it the Spartan Success Program. At the end of every day, teachers would email me, the kids who hadn't done their work in class, because we never gave homework at Spruce Avenue School. We said, you're going to get it done in class, but if you don't do it in class, you're staying back with Mr. Morris after school and the rest of the Spartan Success Program. And we would wait at every door for those kids. Every door was covered. There was no escape. There was no escape from the Spartan Success Program. And the first few months, I'd be like, hey, John, you got social studies to do and you didn't do your math. You better get up there. Well, fuck you, Mr. Morris, and I'm not. Yeah, okay, John, that's good. Are you going? Okay. So yeah, he told me to fuck off, but he was on his way to Spartan Support, so it didn't matter. And then by the end of the whole time, it would just be like, ugh. And they'd go. And the few that just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, we'd suspend them. And then when they'd come back, we'd embrace them again. And we'd treat them just like they were our own kids, and eventually they'd come around and do it. But the teachers were happy because they had a support system. We had a plan to support what our core values were. And that was huge to our success as a school. Monstrous. Because without this program, we would have been nothing. Everybody learned the value of being a good student. Everybody learned the value of what it meant to be a high-level student. We crushed people on the PAT exams for the next 2 years. We had 2 years where we were growing, and then we were in the 90s. We beat schools that had no business, we had no business beating. And I know I'm competitive, so I say we beat them or whatever, the kids, you know, but honestly, like winning's important to me, I can't lie. But in that instance, with those kids, with what they were able to accomplish, it was a miracle, just a miracle. One of the things I'm most proud of that I've ever been associated with in my life, okay? Now, These things here are really, really important. So once you establish a team organization approach, so we create that culture of how things are important, really important that everybody has specifically what they do. So we talked about that. We talked about the core values being important. This comes back down to those roles and responsibilities. What do I do on a daily basis? What's my role in Spartan Support? What's my role in the reading program? Give people things that they know what they're responsible for every single day as a leader. Make sure people know what they're expected to do, and more importantly than what they're expected to do, how they contribute to the overall success of us as a team. How they contribute to the overall success of our program, okay? So as things went on, we created some really cool things. We created a lunch program where we could feed the kids every day. All you have to do as a corporation is say, hey, man, we got like 80% of these kids reading, and we're doing this and we're doing that. They throw money at you. Corporations love inner city schools if they're successful. They don't like the kids doing absolutely nothing all day. That's a problem, okay? So these things we were able to frame. I used to go to because we used to always get the top kids, and again, it comes down to planning for success. The top kids from all the grade 6 classes would all go somewhere else. Because it was like, oh, Spruce Avenue, I don't know. I'd go recruit those kids. I'd be in those elementary schools talking to all those top grade 6 kids. I'd go talk to their parents. Because I knew if we had the best ones, the grade 6 kids who were smart and who wanted to do well academically, I knew the culture of the school would flip. And it did flip. Because those are the kids that make things happen, the serious students who want things to be good. But I couldn't look them in the eye and say, I'm going to look after you, and then have some kid dealing drugs in the front hallway. Couldn't do that. And that's one of the things you have to understand as the leader. That's your job, is to make sure once you have your core values, once you have your list of accountability for everybody, that you do your job and make sure that you're taking care of everything. Okay? So the results, like guys, we had a huge turnaround in culture. We used to have kids walking down the streets with all their Spruce Avenue stuff on, or Spartan stuff. The kids redesigned the logo. They loved being part of Spruce Avenue School. Huge pride by the teachers. I was there for 4 years. Not one teacher left. Not one. We're at an inner city school with 97% poverty. That is an incredible stat. For any of you guys who know about teachers die to get out of inner city schools. Not one even asked to leave. Not one even talked about leaving. They were part of something bigger than themselves. They were empowered to do well. Had nothing to do with me as the leader. It had to do with us creating an empowerment, a way of them feeling special about things. Okay? Pride and achievement. PAT results, we talked about it, so somebody talked about it in the introduction. 90%, guys, on the English. 90%. 90%. Look at the results. They're on the provincial website. If you don't believe me, go look at them. Okay? They're right there. Okay? In the other areas, they were all over 80. I think the only one we were below in might have been math, and it was close. But it was still well over 70. Okay? Not impossible. You go there and it's like, but I still remember to this day my initial talk. Yeah, I don't know how much you're going to be able to do there. It's really tough. That's my pep talk to take to school. Okay? You can do lots, guys. You can do lots if you clearly define roles and you have a vision for what you want to accomplish. Really, really important that you understand that, how important your role as a leader is. Because you can also go somewhere and just let time slip by and nothing happen. Okay? And shame on you if you do, because you're all way too smart for something like that. Okay? Okay, Golden Bears football. So, I'm running out of time here, guys. Sorry. I was worried about going under time. One summer, I was off on vacation. So it was after my 4th year at Spruce Avenue School. And I received a phone call on the phone from the athletic director at U of A. And I'd known all about U of A football for years. Okay, I used to coach football in the city, and I wouldn't send kids to U of A because they didn't look after them. Kids failed out all the time. There was no real strength program there. There was no real corporate support for U of A. It was a problem, okay? So he called me and he talked to me about that. But one thing that football saved my life, okay? Like I dropped out of school in grade 11. I would have been a construction worker, okay? My dad was a construction worker. His dad was a construction worker. Like, it's just sort of the way it was, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with being a construction worker, okay? But I've influenced thousands and thousands and thousands of kids, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and I think had a much wider sphere of influence through staying in school and doing what I'm capable of and sort of reaching my potential than I would have just shoveling dirt, okay? So to me, the only reason I went to school was football. I love football. I remember walking to the guidance counselor's office when I was young, and he said, I was like, okay, I want to go to university next year and play football. He pulled this little thin book out, Lakeland University. He said, well, that's the only place you can go because you're brutal in school, right? And it was like, I was like, okay, well, reflection, right? And I cleaned it up, and I figured out, but I'm telling you, I never would have gone to university if it wasn't for the sport of football. And I see that for young men, for a lot of people that I encounter, it's a huge part of their lives, right? And it always held a real good spot in my heart. And when I thought about U of A football and I thought of the experience the kids were getting here, there was a story in particular that rung with me. My kid was 7 and he went to a quarterback camp. Okay, so he was a 7-year-old kid. And we run, and they only ran like one camp a year, I think, at U of A back then. And they're all doing a breakdown. And the breakdown for these little kids was balls deep. And with all the kids with this smirky little thing, all the university kids with this smirky little smile on their face, like, and I'm just like, are you guys kidding me? I send you my son to teach him how to play football, and you guys, your call is balls deep. And I couldn't imagine a more embarrassing, a more broken, a more ridiculous situation than what existed at U of A football. So when I thought about the opportunity and I thought about what to do here, the one thing that kept resonating with me was this. That is the most broken thing I can imagine. If I don't do it, I'll die in regret, because I'll always think, man, I should have tried that. And I don't care whether it goes right or wrong. If I don't try it, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. So here I am. Okay, and I took over a U of A football program. Okay, and it was as dysfunctional as I can possibly explain to you guys. It was 0-16 the 2 years before I got there. They only had 7 out of a possible 36 scholarship filled. Poor community relationship and reputation. Very poor academic performance. Lots of kids failing out. A huge number of kids failing out every single year. No community involvement virtually at all. No core values. No role identification. And very little sense of accountability, from my estimation. That's the environment. That's the sort of situation that was Golden Bears football at the time. Okay, now, in taking it over, there were 2 main things that needed to be addressed. And I'll try to go pretty quick. I know we're almost out of time here, guys, okay? The building of a support team was essential, okay? And I'll show you this. Building support team and then building a football team, because neither existed, okay? This is what university football looks like. In CIS football and U Sports football, the school provides the head coach's salary and one more salary. And then they provide for uniforms. If you're an elite program, you have $260,000 worth of scholarship money. When I took over the U of A program, there was about $35,000 available for scholarships every year. $35,000. They gave out 7 that year. And that might be a little generous. Football operations, in order to be competitive with the big dogs, like the Calgarys, the UBCs, the people who have money, they fundraise about $300,000 through corporate generation, through corporate sponsorship, through connections with alumni. That's about how much money they raise every year for staffing, for other things to support the program. U of A was generating around $50,000 a year. No chance to win. None. None. I could be here 20, 30 years and be as charismatic and as smart. I could be Bill Belichick, for God's sakes, and we would never win a football game. There is no chance. None. Okay? So this needed to be fixed. And the biggest thing that needed to be fixed, and one of the most important things, was to create some sort of core value system for the program. And it's been this since I got here, and it'll be like this till I leave. Faith families first, school second, and football's third. And with that created a huge shift of program philosophy. A lot of coaches talk to kids about, I want you to come play for me because I want you to play in the CFL. The CFL is where I'm going to get you to. If you play pro football, your problems are going to go away. Let me tell you guys something about, I'll give you a little analogy I use with all the kids I recruit. A kid that's coming out of high school playing football that everybody wants is like a cold can of Coke. You take it out of the cooler and you put it on the table and you pop it open. And it's full of fizz and it's cold and everybody wants it. But what happens to it is it sits on the table. The fizz goes away. It gets warm. And sooner or later, no one wants it anymore. And that's what happens to anybody who ever plays sports or football in particular. And the sport of football takes the old, warm, flat can of pop, picks it up, chucks it into the trash, and gets the next young kid who wants to play, puts it on the table, pops it open, and uses that. And my whole philosophy around building U of A football has been around, you will be an excellent student, you will graduate from here, you will aspire to be an academic All-Canadian, and when you leave me, and when football throws you away, you will have a successful pathway for the rest of your life. That you can sell to corporate Edmonton. That you can sell to the alumni. That people can rally around. And that vision hadn't been articulated before. And I think it's one of the big reasons that our alumni has come on so strong in recent years, and that corporate Edmonton has come on so strong in recent years to reach those goals and to make sure that that happens. I've met with our alumni many, many times. I've met with corporate community. We formed a booster club. All of those infrastructure pieces have now been built, and we have enough money to form that program. But you can imagine the amount of work that goes to create $300,000 on two sides. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of labor that goes into that sort of thing. Okay? To support our structure, and again, I'll go through it. At Spruce Avenue, we had to create reading programs, Spartan Success program, lunch programs. Same thing here. I have an academic support program here that's second to none. The kids come here. Every single kid who comes into my program gets assessed. They write a Delta screener and they write a psychoeducational assessment tool. A learning plan is created for every kid. They work with a learning strategist 4 days a week, and they have 4 or 5 tutors that work with our program. No one fails out of here unless there's some sort of profound learning deficiency. We have a 95% academic success rate in the last 4 years. 95%. There isn't a faculty in the university that has a 95% success rate. We have close to 30 kids at the halfway mark of this year that qualify for Academic All-Canadian. That's our core values, okay? Financial supports, player on-field development. We have a great strength and conditioning program now because we've raised funds. We have a strength coach now. We have that new bubble who's gone up. All of those things to develop football players on the field have happened as a result of what? Establishing core values. Giving people a roadmap, having people understand what you're building around. If you don't have core values, you have nothing as a leader. You have to establish them. For us as a program, core values 1, what's our role? What does each coach have to do every day? What does each player have to do every day? That roles and accountability, and then our final phase that we're working to is getting towards that group accountability. Now, here's the unfortunate slide. I've been here 4 years and I've got 6 wins. I don't care. I know what we're going to be. I know what we're going to be. I have good kids. I have kids who are getting stronger every day. I don't have 18, 19, 20-year-olds anymore. I have 22, 23, 24-year-olds now. And I'm telling you, I'll look you all in the eye, in the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to be one of the best football teams on the field in the country. We're already better than everybody else at the things that I said were most important to me. 20-plus student athletes, halfway mark academic All-Canadians, earned academic, not potential to be earned. Top recruiting classes in the nation over the last few years. Huge part of the community. We work with kids from the time they're 7 till the time they're 18, all year round on football development. We run about 10 camps plus a flag football league. We've taken over Atom football and worked with the community to convert it from being 12-man to 6-man Atom football. We are involved in the sport of football in our community because it's our mandate, it's part of our vision and what we want to do. So, community service. We're involved with multiple. Our kids are always in the community serving. Those are the things that are important to me. Now, you have to win. Don't get me wrong. And that 4 years, 6 wins, that's going to change, I promise you. But it's one of those things where if you're a leader, you have to understand that sometimes you got to weather the storm. Sometimes you'll know, and everybody in your organization will know you're doing the right things. If the people you trust in your organization don't think you're doing the right things, then you got to reflect. But if everyone in your organization is sure, and you're sure, don't quit. Because there's been lots of people who have had really good ideas and been on the track to some really, really good things who just didn't believe in their heart. They couldn't weather the storm. They couldn't take the beating from other people, so they quit. I was on the sideline last year and we lost 60-something to nothing to UBC with a team that I think is much better than that. I had all kinds of people saying all kinds of things. I'm too hard on the players. I'm too easy on the players. I don't know how to coach. I don't know how to lead. I don't know how to talk to my kids. I don't know how to motivate people. There wasn't one bad thing that wasn't said. I don't care because they don't know. They're not in our group. They're not in my team. They're not in our circle. And as a leader, you got to understand that. You got to reflect, why do things happen to you? But you certainly can't be wounded by every single thing that's said to you, because otherwise, I'm telling you, it's going to be a short career for you in leadership. Okay? Believe in your process. Believe in what you're doing. It is essential that as you build your team, the number one criteria that you do is you build people that believe in what you're building. It can't just be your vision, because people won't, it's kind of a different generation. People won't just work for you. They got to work for what you believe in together. And they got to work. You got to find workers. You got to find people who will work to get it done. Don't compromise on what you know is important, and celebrate what you think you've accomplished. I'll tell anybody in the world, I can sit down with anybody in this city and talk about my program and talk about it with a whole bunch of pride, because I really believe in what we've done. I believe in all the things that we've accomplished. We just got to fix Saturday afternoons and we're going to be all fine, okay? But we have lots and lots of good things going. Okay, so again, guys, thanks very much. I appreciate this opportunity. I can't explain to you how excited I was to talk to you guys. Thanks. Sorry, I went a bit over there, sorry.
Have a drink and sit down. Make yourself comfy.
Thank you.
Well, that was dynamite. Whoops. I now understand why his Eskimos always beat my BC Lions. You know, it's really wonderful, because when we think of team building, the sports team and the football team are always the classic thing. And when you have these executive leadership programs that they have, and business people pay umpteen $1 million, pay lots of money to go on them, and they always bring out the coach of the football team. But it's really a marvelous process. And you're working here at the university. What's the difference between the players you've got here at the university and the players you played with on the Eskimos? I mean, obviously Eskimos, they're winning all of these games. What do you know from that will help you bring this team here? What's the next step?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between the two is the people we had at the Eskimos were hardened winners. They knew what to do. They knew what was expected. They knew what to do. Like, when I took over here, we had a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids. They couldn't even step with the right foot. They didn't know anything about football. They didn't know anything about life. They didn't know anything about, okay, when this happens, that happens. So teaching them that progression and how to approach the game and how to learn the game is very important, both on and off the field. So if you don't teach them how to be successful in the classroom, if you don't teach them the approach it takes to be successful on the field, they can't be successful. So I think, to me, when you're building a pro team, you have a bunch of guys who are ready to play. And if you get them and they're not ready to play, then you got to find a different guy who is, because you're not building people at pro football. That's why it's never been appealing to me at all to coach pro football, because you're building a team with just pieces. So you find a different piece. This piece doesn't work, I'll find a different piece. Whereas at university football, you're building young men. You're building pieces. You're building a team. You're building capacity to be successful. And it takes a little while. So that's where we're at right now. We're really, really close right now, and I'm very excited moving forward here, but it just takes a little bit longer to build people.
And what is an academic All-Canadian?
Academic All-Canadian is 3.2 and used eligibility for the last year. So you have to have an A average and have competed on the field.
And what's your percentage?
Well, we had over 20. We have over 20 actual academic All-Canadians this year. I think we had close to 20 last year as well. So
out of how many?
Out of 90.
Wow, that's really pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad. When you think about the young kids that come in can't be academic All-Canadian their first year because they haven't used eligibility, and that applies to about the first 2 years that they're there. We have a very, very high percentage of kids that are in their third, fourth, and fifth year that achieve academic All-Canadian with us. It's a huge point of emphasis. Like, we have in our locker room, everybody has sort of a bench to sit on at their locker. If you're an academic All-Canadian, you get a nice padded chair, and you get that presented to you in front of everybody. It's the little things, honestly. If it's your course, if it's your core values, if it's your priorities, you got to back them up with things you do within your organization. That's a big one for us.
Some of the students, of course, are going to have a chance to ask you questions, but I suspect that those who are not going to be in the masterclass might have some things they'd like to ask or comments they'd like to make, so I'll open it up to the audience. It could even be members of the community too, but if there's anybody who'd like to ask a question. I feel sort of, like I've had a workout watching this, because I sort of, there's so much energy, it's remarkable, and I can't see. Is there a hand up there? Yeah, there you go. Okay, dear. Go ahead. Yeah, it's working. Just talk right into it.
Okay, so it seems like you work the most time with males, like with your career development. So my question is, have you ever worked in a fandom, like with the working time with women? Like, have you worked in any working environment that have many female? And what's kind of strategy to build like teamwork in this kind of environment?
Yeah, most of my experience in education had to do with mostly female staff. So most of my staff at Spruce Avenue were female staff members. I only had, I think, 2 male staff members in the whole school. And I'll be honest with you, besides interpersonal relationships and when you're talking to someone when something might go wrong or when something, it's very different how you talk to a male or a female person when you're speaking through those things. But as far as leadership and guiding through the process I talked about today, it's almost identical. I don't do a lot of changes. I don't do a lot of things that are different. And I have an experience, and like I said, most of my departments as a department head, as an assistant principal, and as a principal have been, for the most part, female. So I don't think there's a big difference there. I don't know, maybe it's just my experience. You know, maybe I just haven't noticed it. But to me, honestly, clear direction, clear core values, clear role identification, all those things are essential to anybody, regardless of gender. No?
Yes, go ahead, dear. I see a hand there with a white sleeve there.
Hi. You talked about establishing core values as being like the place where you start. But I'm wondering, when you walk in a room and you're in a new situation and you've never seen these people before, how do you start inspiring them to get on board with these core values? Like, how do you start that?
You talk to them about what's important to them. What are you guys good at? What do you guys like about what you work? What do you like about, what turns your crank about this place? And if nothing does, then it's a lot more challenging, right? But you'll find that people are passionate about different things they do. And then it's a matter of finding that passion and giving them responsibilities in those areas and having them build things in those areas, right? It really is like the first few months you go into any organization, if you're sent in a leadership role, you need to talk very little and listen a lot. Because really there's lots of things going on there that you can't begin to understand in regards to context, in regards to the environment that exists, all those things. You have to figure all that out. And really, before you start making changes and big decisive moves, you have to understand the culture of that place. You have to understand the people in that place. Because ultimately, they're the people who are going to make it go, right? So if you don't know how to work with them, it's going to be difficult for you. So lots of listening and lots of one-on-one conversations, lots of staff meeting conversations. Like, people act differently in a group than they do as an individual. So you have to have different settings for them to voice what they think is important to you. Okay? Yep.
Your boss, the dean, when he was talking to me about you when we were inviting you to participate in the foundations course 2 years ago, talked about the fact that you changed the language at that school, that people had kind of a defeatist language. Yeah. Could you say a little bit about that? Because that seemed to me very important.
Yeah, they used to, and it still bothers me. We used to go to these, and it was the CSEP meetings, right? So we had, it was a group of principals that dealt with just inner city kids. And there was a couple that always talked about the ghetto. Well, these are the ghetto kids. And it's just like, we're not the ghetto kids. We're kids. They're kids. As soon as you start thinking yourself as a ghetto kid or as a poor kid or as a disadvantaged kid, kids are kids. And I'll tell you this, you can look at all the research you want. Everybody's brain's essentially the same. If you can figure out how to teach the person, they have the same capacity to learn as you do, whether it be somebody from the inner city or not. But you have to figure out how their brain works before you can do that. And if you start the journey off by saying, well, this is just a ghetto kid, or this is a refugee kid, or this is an Aboriginal kid, or this is a ELL kid, or this is how are you going to be successful? Because you're already saying that the kid's not going to be successful just by your language. And I think that language is hugely important because every kid that you deal with at that age has the potential to be successful. And I think the schools have to be very, very vigilant as to what language they use when they talk about them.
That's the framing effect that some of you have looked at in your courses. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, since you left Spruce Avenue, has that culture that you put in place, has that kept up? Or how did you transition onto the next principal to keep those core values there?
It kept up for a year. And the problem was, and I this is one of the, I'm not very proud of this, but this is sort of the way it is. A lot of people left after I left. So about a third of the staff or more left the year after, and then about 5 more people left the year after that. So they were essentially, they were faced with, all the people who were part of that culture we had sort of moved on. So then it was up to them to define their own culture and define their own new core values and all those sort of things. And I'm not sure to what extent that work's taken place, right? So and I guess that's one of the things I did consider when I left there was the fact that we built something really good and that I really want to leave that environment. But I'd already been there 4 years. They probably would have moved me within another year anyway to a different school because they don't let you stay at a school forever anyway. But yeah, that's not something that I feel bad about that because really if you think about it as a leader, you should leave a legacy behind you that can self-preserving. But when all of the staff leave, that's when it becomes, like even the admin assistant and the clerk left. So it was kind of, it was very difficult to maintain.
So it's hard if people don't remember, if there's nobody there to as a custodian. It's interesting. My first political office, I ran for the Vancouver School Board. And one of the things I learned was how important the leadership in a school is. And principals are really, really important. You walk into a school, and it could be any part of town, and you just feel it's working. The kids are busy. They've got a kind of a direction. And other places, it's sort of chaos. And it's really, really wonderful. It's incredibly important, one of the most important areas of leadership. We have time for one more question before we move on to our masterclass. Okay, there's a hand way up in the air there. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Morris.
Hello.
My name is Tim. So today you told us about your experience with the Edmonton Eskimos. So you mentioned when you joined the team, there were some good players, very experienced ones that, as I realized, they supported you. There was Henry, I forgot his last name, Gizmo?
Gizmo.
Yeah,
Williams,
Gizmo. Yeah, you said that they never bragged and they gave you an opportunity to learn from them, to succeed. And so my question is, how would you address a situation where, like when you, for example, join a new organization or new team, and there are some people who have influence over the team, and they don't give you an opportunity to develop your abilities, to show what you're capable of, and as a result of that, you can't contribute to the team. So what would you do in that situation?
I would say as a person coming into that organization, it's very difficult for me to put myself into those shoes because I'm not faced by that. And I don't know how much of that situation would be them not knowing you. I don't know how much it would be with a dysfunctional organization where it's just kind of a bullying culture. What I would say to you is my first step would be to get to know them better. Because most of the time when you're not getting respect, it's because people don't know what you're capable of. And if you get to know people and you start having conversations with people and you start showing and talking to people about what you think is important and why, you earn credibility because you earn a reputation that is someone who's pensive and who knows what they're doing and can be successful, right? If you do that and you're met with bullying, you're met with, I don't care what you have to say, it doesn't matter how much you want to get to know me, I don't want to get to know you for whatever reason, then you got to look beyond that group and you got to look for supervision. And that's when the leader of that organization should be involved with that, and you should go talk to them and say, look, I'm not trying to do anything, I'm trying to be successful here. I want to be part of the group, and I'm finding that there's a dysfunction here with how this works. If they're a good leader, they'll address it. And they won't address it with you involved with it. They'll address it in a way that keeps you out of it, but also allows that piece that's obviously broken to be fixed. Okay, that's a very touchy situation because I don't know, there's a whole bunch of pieces I don't know from your story, right? I don't know if there's a danger element. I don't know, like socially there's danger, physically there's a whole bunch of pieces that could exist, right? So talk's usually the first step, and then seek the advisor, seek the person who's in charge.
That reminds me of a story that somebody told me when I was meeting with some people in Calgary about how the person was working for a company and they had just a terrible leader. And about 3 of the people left. And I think that sometimes what happens is that if the larger organization doesn't know they've got this terrible leader is eroding some of their best people. All the people who have choices can go elsewhere. So bad leadership is not a victimless crime. And it really does matter that you pay attention to what's happening throughout your organization if you have responsibilities for others, to make sure that people aren't killing the hopes and killing the possibilities for people who could be making a contribution.
No, and I think vigilance of the leader to look for things like that are important. Like if I think of it from a military term, you have lieutenants that are working with you. Like I have captains on my team, and I meet with my captains on a regular basis about this is how, like my first question for everybody who exits the team every year, I have a year-end survey. How are you treated? As an incoming player, how are you treated by others in this organization? And then I have the captains, the older players fill out, how did you treat the new people coming in here? And I read every single one. And that's an important part for me, right? So you have to, as a leader of an organization, you have to be very vigilant as to how your lieutenants, how your captains are voicing what you figure to be the vision. Because as soon as you, like I said, as soon as you snooze for a minute, One of them is talking about something that's totally opposed to what you want it to be, right? And that's why meetings with like I have a captain's group, I have a captain's council I meet with every month, and we talk about things and we read stuff together and we talk about leadership and how it works, and that to me is how I keep people on board. It sounds to me like the case you're talking about, you've got a group of people who are in leadership positions who they're not really in line with what the organization stands for, right? So that's the main leader's job to sort of address that.
So before we retire to our master class and our other conversations, you're very philosophical, maybe, or thinking long term about your win-loss record, and we're all going to come out and cheer because we think that what you're doing is great leadership. But how does your team feel about this? Are they sharing the same commitment that they're going to get better?
Yeah, it's funny because we had a year-end survey, because this was the one year, like we felt we were breaking through the ice this year. We felt we were going to be very, very successful as a team this year. And I'll just go through this. It sounds like I'm not an excuses guy, but this is what happened to us as a team this year, okay? So in July, our starting quarterback blew his knee out, okay? In July, our offensive MVP had a family issue where he had to step away from football so that he could salvage his marriage. The first week of the season, the first week of training camp, we lost both our fullbacks and we lost our starting defensive end, who was a fourth-year player going into that. This first game of the season, we lost our defensive MVP because he broke a vertebrae in his back. Within the first week of the season, we had 8 starters out. Now, I'm not going to go telling everybody that because excuses are like armpits. Everybody's got 1 or 2, right? It's like, honestly, and I don't want to hear it either. I don't want to hear it from, we've had lots of people supporting us very, very well for the last 4 years and helping us build the program. We are way better than we've ever been. And the team, if you look at the surveys, I always do surveys at the end of the year, the most positive surveys we've ever had as a team. Everybody understands where we are. It's just now a matter of, we got to make it happen now, right? And that's everybody understanding. And I've really moved this year, and this is the first year I felt we're ready. We're really moving towards that bottom-down leadership model where the captains are taking responsibility. I used to have everybody there at 6 in the morning, and they had to work out, and if they weren't on time, they'd have to come to me, and if they had 3 strikes, they'd have to come have a big meeting with me or get kicked off the team. It was all through me, and I've really done a big move towards spreading that. Now my captains are older, they're all capable, they all understand what I'm looking for. I've spread that out to them, and I think that's been a very good move for us as well. So very positive with our team. It's just, and I think for the community in general, the community is also still patient. Many of the alumni are still patient. Many people are still patient, but it's just one of those things. Imagine doing a project where every time you presented it, somebody gave you a score. Here, good or bad. You know what I mean? Red or blue. Red or green, right? So it's ultra accountability in sports. Ultra accountability. And despite a million things you're doing right, you're judged on what happens for 3 hours a week, 8 times a year, right?
But I think it's really great how much you believe in your players as people and how they set up for success as students at the university, successful graduating students for whom football is part of their maturing process, but it's not their whole life, that they have many, many things. And if we take nothing else away from this, excuses are like armpits. I'm going to keep that. Anyway, we're off to the rest of our class now, but Chris Morris, thank you so much for being here. We're just very happy with you.